Welcome to Old Iron Machine Works. In this video, I will be getting a granite surface plate up on the bench off the cart. Basically, is I just don't have shop floor space for it, but I do want to be able to start using it. And but the bench I'm putting it on needs some support. This is the pieces that I will be building in this video, and I thought I would show them after they're installed just to make it a little easier to follow along with the video. But they will basically be supporting the weight of that 800-pound stone. So let's get started. If you follow my channel much at all, you know I like to reuse stuff. And this is a bunch of material that we saved from the scrap bin. Not sure exactly what the project was originally. We just found it, at work, and it ended up being perfect for this project. It already had pieces of pipe that were threaded on both ends, solid pieces threaded on the outside, so it actually made the job quite simple to do. If I had to thread everything, I would have went a different course on this project. Here I'm just putting a little protector on the threads and just facing the ends. Like I mentioned already, most of this stuff was nothing more than just putting a saw, cutting it off, and then just kind of cleaning up the end. I hear a lot when people say, "Oh, never use your caliper for scribes or whatever." I have always kept a junker beater pair of calipers. Half the time I don't even care if the needle works or not. When I'm splitting certain distances, or all I want to do is just put a little scribe line on. They work great for that. But no, I would not recommend using your good calipers to do these kind of jobs. Now here, I originally cut the pieces off, and then I had a change of plan, which my plans are always in my head, so they change quite often. And I just had to go in and, cut a piece off and clean it back up. Now, not only am I making the support to support the weight of the stone, but I also want to make it fully adjustable where I can, throw a level up on the stone and actually be able to adjust the stone perfectly level if I need to. And that's what these pieces will be. They will be, when it's done, mounted right directly on the top of the wood butcher block table, and they will be adjustable. Now the slugs already had a 1/2 inch hole through them, which I didn't even have to drill any holes. And what I did is took a 12-point head bolt, machined the little shoulder off of it, and then it got silver soldered right in the hole. And those will go down through the top of the table, and then to adjust the level, you'll just open the door on the cabinet, put a wrench on the bolt, and be able to make your adjustment. Now these plates will be mounted directly to the top of the wood cabinet, and then the adjustable portions that hold the stone will be silver soldered to these. Here I'm just laying out where I need to drill the holes in these plates. There'll be 3 holes that screws will go through to mount it to the top of the bench. And then there'll be, on one there'll be 1 hole, and on the other one there'll be 2 holes for the adjustable bolt to drop down through. Here I'm using a transfer punch to center up the slugs on the plate so I could scribe it. So then after I drill the hole, then I can reline it up and weld it to the plate. Another option I could have did is just went ahead and welded them right to the plate and then just ran the drill bit right down through the center. Either or. Now those bolts are going to be used for making the adjustment. So they'll get silver soldered to the slug, and then I'll drill a hole and it'll drop down through the hole on the other plate. This has been one of those videos for me that I know is going to be kind of tough for some people to kind of follow along, you know, so I'm trying to narrate the best I can so somebody can kind of understand the process. But I think as the video goes along, if somebody sticks with it and watches the whole video, I think it will all make sense. I know in my last videos there's been some comments about some people like longer videos, some like shorter videos. To me, this is an extremely long video at 50 something minutes, but I started with 3.5 hours of content video just on this project. So yes, there has been a lot that I've chopped out of the video during editing. Now I chose to just silver solder those sleeves to the plate. Plenty strong enough. All it has to do is just keep it from twisting when you go to adjust the plate. And I just didn't feel like welding and grinding the extra weld. And being that this is going to be underneath the surface plate that nobody can see, I just wanted to make sure it was as clean looking as possible. And here I'm just making sure I get some silver solder flowed down in the seam, you know, to make sure that bolt's nice and solid. Now here I'm just shearing off some chunks of rubber that'll sit on top of the adjusting pads, and they'll go between the pads and the granite surface plate. And ultimately those will be a failure, but you'll see later in the video. And here the plate shows the adjustable bolts, which you'll get to by opening the doors in the cabinet. And now I just have to make some plastic spacers to go between the rubber and the adjustable slugs. And yes, I was running a little low on silver solder. Okay, here I'm cutting the plates that will actually go inside the cabinet, and they'll be at a very top piece that will go right up against the wood. And then I go back to the pile and I find enough threaded pieces that I can start cutting off. And each section, there'll be adjustable sections from the ground to the bottom of the cabinet, and then there'll be from the bottom of the cabinet to the middle shelf, and then there'll be sections that go from the middle shelf all the way up to the top of the butcher block wood section. And I got lucky there because a lot of the pieces I can just cut them off, and I'm using the larger threaded areas and the smaller threaded areas. And I was lucky enough to find pieces of pipe, the different sizes that seem to screw on every section. I know I'm calling it pipe, but most of this material is a seamless tubing. Now there, I was able to cut off the one end with the smaller thread and actually found some tubing that was already threaded to even fit it. So I was very fortunate in finding enough stuff to match up. Here I'm just making this shallow little recess to where one of the sections of pipe will sit right inside the recess, just to keep everything in line. Now these pieces here probably require the most machining of everything, and you'll see shortly as I work on that how much I needed to machine off a bit. Don't like when the material starts peeling off like this. You can have a really great finish, but this is the kind of material that can take a finger off if you're not careful. So I always have, my little pole, hook to clear the chips. Okay, for those that do watch most of the video, I'll definitely be explaining every piece and every section, where they go and what they do throughout the video. Now these pieces, once I have 2 holes that I needed to drill in the support in the cabinet, and then I'll have to trim those to the exact length I need. On these sections, I just needed to have a solid plug on one end. Here I need to machine some grooves in a couple of the slugs for a plate to go down in, and just kind of using the caliper as the center to cut her up. What's the old saying, like horseshoes and hand grenades? Close enough. Okay, here I got the slots machined, but what I want to do is I don't want the plates to be sitting on both sides of the end of the slots. I want to have a center point, and I just happen to find some pieces that also fit the tapered threaded ends. So what I'll do is I'll just cut the end of that tapered piece off, make a little slug that I can install in the center, and then that way I can have a center point for the plate to rest on. Okay, I got the center point cut off, but I needed something to hold it in the lathe for me to clean it up. So I found another chunk of the female end that fit it, cut it in half, and now I can chuck that up in the lathe. The whole idea of having it sit on that center point is just so it kind of spreads the load out evenly on both ends of the steel plate. This particular piece already had a hole drilled in it, which for what I'm doing isn't going to make any difference. Now normally with a taper, it would just, you'd bottom it out, tighten it up. But I did put a little Loctite on it because I needed to back it out just a little bit. And I just didn't want it to be moving around. Okay, these are the adjusters, and here's the gray plastic, and then I will glue the rubber pads to the top of those. And I'm jumping over here now. I got all the sections that'll go under and in the cabinet all done, where I'm just shooting some primer and get some paint on those. Okay, now I'm getting ready to attach those to the top of this old butcher block bench. This bench is 36 by 10 foot. And years ago when I bought it, I actually flipped the wood over. That's why it looks pretty decent. The other side was, years of kind of chewed up. And yes, I'm going to drill holes through the wood. And since the slab's going to be inside the shop, out of the weather, and underneath a slab that you can't see, I decided to use all stainless steel and chrome plated brass hardware. Okay, there may be some wondering about the location of the pads for the surface plate. Surface plates have 3 points that they sit on, roughly, like a third in from the ends. And anyway, that's a whole new topic. But on this particular surface plate, the mounting pads that I'm making are going to be the identical exact position that plate's been sitting on probably since it's been new. I didn't talk too much about the Herman Stone pad itself, or should I say surface plate. But Herman Stone was bought out in the early 70s by Starrett. And the way I understand, some of the pink slabs are the same core as this one came from. It's just the deeper they get into the core, colors change over the years. It's funny how when I said quarry, it sounded like core. Okay, now it's time to get the bars bolted down to the top. And my arms aren't quite long enough. So you'll see, I have to put some tape on a couple of the screws in order to keep them from spinning, while the impact then tightens up the back screws. Okay, here I'm getting ready to start laying out the position where all the support legs are going to go. And I will have to drill a hole through one section, the middle shelf. So yeah, I'm just using a plumb blob just to find my center line. Okay, here shows the support for the shelf, just a bent piece that's just welded up on the shelf. And what I do is I drill 2 holes through it, and then now these sections will go up through the hole, and I just got to trim the ends off to where the large diameter portion of that fits flush. And here I'm just measuring to see how long that one tab needs to be before I trim it off. I don't fit very well trying to get inside that cabinet. So a lot of working on my back and trying to film the best I can. Okay, if there's anybody that is having a hard time following along with what I'm doing, this is going to be the best clip right here where I'm kind of standing all the sections up right now where you can see them. And of course, that's the top section, which is it has its own adjustment. And then you'll have a center adjustment, and then all the way on the bottom. Okay, so right here, that's the section that goes up through the shelf and gets trimmed off. Well, then when it transfers over to that section, it needs solid surface. Without solid surface, it ain't gonna do its job. And the shelves are gonna act just basically like shims. That's all they're gonna be. And then when we get to the bottom section, you can see they have a half-inch pins in them. Now the holes were already drilled in those sections, so all I had to do is just get a little pin, put a little Loctite on it, and it just helps for alignment. So that's the section that'll sit right on the concrete, and then that will adjust all the way up to where it snugs up on the bottom shelf. That red cardboard simulates the shelf. Not sure what I'm doing there, but anyway, the red simulates the shelf, then the center section will go on, and then you'll be able to adjust that up tight up to the middle shelf. And then from the middle shelf, the top section will set up, and the bar will span all the way across the wood underneath the main supports that are holding the surface plate. And I hope I made that somewhat clear what I got going on. Okay, you all have seen those people with iPhones that forget to turn their phone at the right angle when they're filming for wide angle, or if you don't film it right, you get all that black area on the sides. Well, that's what I ended up doing when I trimmed off those pieces. So anyway, rather than putting that in the video, those pieces were trimmed to length, and now I'm just putting some never sees on the threads. Really not needed, but these are just going to be adjusted by hand. So I don't know about in the future if anybody ever needs to play around or adjust it, but hopefully they won't have to deal with any threads being froze up. I'm sure there's some people that would be, why give up workbench space? Well, a big part of my day job for over 20 years has been rebuilding compressor valves out of natural gas compressors. And I have now moved that operation to home. I'm now rebuilding the valves at home. So I will be able to put a protective sheet of something over the plate and still be able to utilize the space over the surface plate. Okay, here I'm starting with putting the pieces in from the concrete slab to the bottom of the shelf, and then from the bottom shelf to the center shelf. I also should mention, anybody that watches my videos knows I'm a huge fan of the glass bead blast cabinets, and I really like blasting stuff right down to its bare metal, but it leaves no protective coating of any kind. So that's another reason why, I either put oil on it or something just to keep it from wanting to rust up. So the Never Sees definitely gives it some little protection there. Okay, I got all the supports in. There's the bottom one. Here's the middle support. And here's the top support. And the plate, when we get to it, and the plate is resting just underneath the top plate that's bolted down. And in the way with teeter-tottering, I wanted to just have the weight even, you know, from front to back on the plate. And there's the adjusting bolts for you just going with a 1/2 inch wrench when you need to re-level up the plate. But none of the bench will really be carrying any load now. You know, the 800-pound slab will be all the load will be transferred all the way down to the concrete. You know, through those supports. You will see at the end of the video, right there, I will put a plate across there, so I don't have to worry about any big thing rolling off and landing on my beautiful surface plate. I've mentioned in other videos that in my shop I do have a 10-inch step that I have to go up and over. And I just have a little wooden ramp. And what I'm doing here is just putting some rubber pads, so when I pick the plate up, I'll just be pulling the cart plate and everything up that ramp. And I just don't need anything sliding off of the forks. Been using this 3M Super 77 spray adhesive for many years. Awesome stuff, and it's never let me down. At almost 800 pounds, I'm definitely giving my lift cart a good workout. Now the position of the forks on the lift cart in relationship to the supports screwed to the table, I had to end up getting a bunch of 3/4 thick boards and pry it up, and then I'll just have to end up using the toe jack that I made, and then just work back and forth, pull one block at a time and let it down and switch from side to side. Here you can see the lines I put on the table. That's where I want the front face of the plate to line up with. So before I set it all the way down, I'll make sure I get it pried in position. Okay, we got it sitting in place. Um, Sitting on the pads, all lined up, nice and pretty. Okay, here we got the Super 77 contact cement locking the rubber to the plastic. And then we got the moly loop from the plastic to the metal. And you can see where I'm spinning with the wrench. Everything's locked in place like it should be, and everything's sliding where it should slide. And here I'm ready to put stuff back in the cabinet. It will change what I put in the cabinet, uh, but that's okay. All right, remember earlier when I said that that 3M Super 77 contact cement never let me down? Well, I come back the next day and I noticed the slab's cockeyed. I'm like, what the heck? Well, I was asking a little much of that contact cement. To have three small discs with some contact cement, expect to not move. Looking back, yes, I could have did a million things different on how I put them on. But what I ended up doing is just machining three more buttons out of the same gray plastic, and I used the original three pads that were originally on the stone. For whatever reason, I was thinking the thinner ones, keep the pad a little bit lower. But in the end, there really can't. Something would have to actually break for it to ever move. And here we got it back together. And like I said, one of those ears buttons would have to bust all the way off for it to ever move now. That brings us to cleaning. Now this surface plate's been sitting around for many years, probably 25 years at least, if not more. It did have a cover on it. It was out of particle board, and you could tell like some moisture and glue, kind of stained the surface plate a little bit. So I took a razor blade and kind of ran around the stone, trying to remove any type of small high spot, and then I used some ammonia for the initial cleaning. And you can see the left corner there. That's just after you clean it with ammonia. And there's lots of opinions on different cleaners for the plates. I went ahead and just ordered some of this Starrett and was very happy with it. And as you can see, it brings the color out great. And anyway, I'm very happy with it. Are there other ones as good or better? Maybe. I don't know. But I did know that I didn't want to just put anything on this particular stone. Now, I never mentioned before, this stone is 30 inch by 36 inch, which is, to me, a kind of rare size. Most of the 36 inch stones that you see are 24 wide, not 30 wide. And like I mentioned earlier, the stone was made by the Herman Stone company. And from what I could see, they were bought out in the early 70s, possibly 71, by Starrett. And anyway, the plate weighs almost 800 pounds. Beautiful shape, no nicks or dings anywhere in it. The true flatness, I'd like to get somebody here sometime that could actually check it out and just see how flat it is. I would assume it's an A or AA, but that's just an assumption. Here I still got to do a little bit more fine tuning, but with this level at a half a thousandths per foot, I'll probably be chasing my tail on it. And I dug my old square out. This is a World War II era 2-foot Starrett square, which at some point I haven't really used it too much up to this date, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to use it more. And one of my surface gauges, another item that I haven't used too much, and hopefully in the future we'll use more. I mentioned I rebuilt a lot of valves. I've threw tons of these old junk valves away, and I decided to take one and do a little modifying and machining on it. And I think it'll make it kind of a neat little base. Anyway, if you made it this far, I appreciate you taking the time to check out the video. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. Thumbs up are always appreciated.